prime thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm Ted Wynn. That's my co-host, Marshall Newhouse. And we are going to preview the game against the Kansas City Chiefs today. The Raiders are coming off of their first win since week 1. And everything kind of came together. We talked a lot about how Chip Kelly has kind of found realistic ways for the Raiders to move the ball. They're not trying to push the ball downfield just because they can't have the blocking for that. Blocking wise, they've gone to a little bit more duo so that he can get the ball north and south quickly so they don't have to sustain blocks. So we'll get into our all 22 notes. The Chiefs are 3-3 again after a slow start to the season. They've kind of found their footing, and they look like a dangerous team. Chris Collinsworth said during the broadcast when they played Detroit that people within the Chiefs building feel better about this team, even though they're I think they were undefeated at this point last season. But being 3-3, they feel better about this team because they feel like the ceiling is so much higher. And I agree. I mean, when you look at this Chiefs team, their offensive line talent, the receivers they have, the ceiling for this offense is so much better. But we'll get into some of that as we talk about what we're looking for when the Raiders have the ball, when the Chiefs have the ball. Just quick injury notes. Josh Simmons, the Chiefs phenom rookie left tackle, he missed the game against Detroit because of personal reasons. And based on the comments that we're hearing today from Kansas City, it seems like he might be missing this game as well. They haven't really commented on it. It seems like a serious situation, so I hope everything's okay for him. But Jalen Moore, who they signed as a potential starting tackle before they drafted Simmons, came in and played a really good game against Aiden Hutchinson. Real quick, the Raiders, Jakobi Meyers didn't practice today. Brock Bowers didn't practice today, but we kind of expect Bowers to miss this game and get the bye week to heal and come back full strength, hopefully. There's rumors from Ricky Scoops, who has a dog Abby on Twitter, but we still have to take him seriously because he's broken a lot of news before some of the insiders. He said that Jakobi Meyers' trade is pretty much done. So the Raiders might be missing Jakobi Meyers, but Trey Tucker has kind of taken over that role as a receiver. Michael Mayer is going to get a ton of targets. Once Brock Bowers comes back, he's going to get a ton of targets. So I guess it does kind of make sense to trade him. What do you think about a potential Myers trade?
Well, yeah, if you're not going to feature him, or if you don't feel like he's just going to bring this offense into a more competitive space, which I think there's an argument to be made about that. But again, this is a new regime finding their people, their style of guy. And if you don't believe he's that, then I understand trying to find some value there to improve your team, knowing that you do have young guys who are unproven, but with a lot of talent that in theory could assume that role and could kind of catch up in a sense with just repetitions and just playing, getting thrown in the fire. It includes Jack Besh and Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton. So Alex Bachman, maybe even if you trust him there as more of an underneath slot guy. So they have enough to kind of compensate for that, but he gives you tons of experience. He's been in the league a long time. And so they've just got to feel like, hey, this is we want to move in a younger direction. We want to see what we have in the receiving room. He's not like a game-breaking receiver per se. He's a very trusty receiver that I think can help a playoff team. But I understand trying to get value. It just seems interesting that is where you start. And to me, that's not even the top 3 of their issues in Jakobi Meyers of the receiving core. But, it's ultimately I went through this. When regimes change, those coaches didn't draft you or sign you or develop you. And so there's less loyalty and less ability for them to keep you around. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there was some trade talk at the beginning of the season because they weren't willing to extend Myers. They're not willing to give him $10 million a year or whatever it is. So I guess this does make sense because they are, he's probably gone next year. So you could try to get a third round pick if a team is really that desperate and it becomes a bidding war for him. Like you mentioned, he can help a playoff team, and there are several teams looking for a receiver exactly like Jakobi Meyers. So, yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of young talent. They love Trey Tucker. I mean, like every time I hear, Chip Kelly talk or Pete Carroll talk, they're also always talking about how hard Trey Tucker's practiced, and we see that coming to fruition in these games where he is making these big leaps as a receiver. Last game, you saw him be able to get some yak, which we haven't seen from him a lot. Because he was more of just like that deep ball guy, but he's becoming a guy that you can attack on different levels of the field. So your top three guys as far as targets are going to be Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, and Michael Mayer, and then like you mentioned, Besh. They like Thornton. Obviously, he's not where he needs to be quite yet, but they believe in his future. And yeah, so I guess it does make sense for the team to trade him if they could get some good compensation for him. But let's get into our all 22 notes. Marshall, what do you see from this team after looking at the all 22 film?
Yeah, still, just and they got to clean up the run fits. They kind of reverted back to not as bad as the first few weeks, but back in that direction of Ashton Jeanty having to deal with mess in front of him before he ever gets to the line of scrimmage. I mean, Pete Carroll applauded his physicality, his toughness, and the way he was running, which I agree with. It was tough, it was physical, but he was getting direct hits, and he averaged 3.3 yards a carry. And that's just with 23 carries. That's when you start to worry, like, oh, are we overusing this guy because there's not any room to go, and so he's just running into a wall. And so, Cole Miller being out and trying to figure out the already kind of weird dynamics on the line with Parham and Meredith. I want to see more cleanliness up front. And then, Gino was noticeably less aggressive downfield. I think that was concerted effort, both in the play design and his mindset, trying to get rid of the ball even faster, even though he was already one of the fastest and time to throw. And so, they're going to have to continue that. I mean, they're going to have to attack the middle of the field this week against Kansas City. Plays a lot of too high, a lot of underneath opportunities in the zone of catching and running. So he's going to have to dump the ball off to Jeanty and get the ball out of his hands quickly to underneath receivers. But yeah, the film feels like they're going to transition to this until at least he just gets the interceptions down and they can understand what they have in their pass game and who they are trying to become and be more competitive on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, and there's a balance there. I mean, I think he is getting rid of the ball, and I think there are opportunities downfield. So you don't want to take that completely away from Gino, because that's what made him, so successful in Seattle, is being able to be aggressive, but at the same time, just learning to pick your spots and not throw into those really tight windows where you're taking chances on interceptions. So, but I think the first step is to just get into a mindset of quickly getting rid of the ball, and then second, as you progress, just picking your spots a little bit better, because you can't do that against the Chiefs where you're just throwing the ball short the entire time. So it's a balance. And as far as the run blocking goes, was there like a particular issue that you saw with these negative runs that were kind of common?
Yeah, I think talking about the guard and tackle relationship, not understanding the leverage you have pre-snap versus where you're going. So if you're going zone left and you're on the backside, if our assigned linebacker is a little bit behind the defensive tackle as a guard on what we call a B block with the backside tackle, I have time to give that tackle presence and help, whether it's a stiff arm, a shoulder, we call it a flipper, all that stuff. And it felt like at times both directions between guard, tackle, and center guard, guys would kind of leave their combo partner hanging out to dry, and it caused splits. And especially when you're going against a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, you've got to get as much presence on guys like that before you get to the second level. And feel like there's issues with understanding just angles and leverage within these combo blocks.
Yeah, and I think, when they're running duo, I feel like Ashton Genty's vision and understanding of how to run to play is getting better. I thought early on he was a little impatient running duo, but I think now he's starting to understand how to manipulate defenders on his touchdown run where he went untouched. Usually you're reading that inside linebacker where to go when you're running back running duo, and that linebacker jumped outside and he found a cut right up the A gap for the touchdown untouched. So he's making progress. And Pete Carroll said today that they want him to get about 20 carries a game. So they're going to keep this usage with Ashton Genty at the rate that is going right now. So that's going to be good to see. I still think he needs to get a little bit more involved in the passing game, especially in this game against the Chiefs, where he will get matched up against Nick Bolton and guys that are a little bit slower. So he needs to be more involved there. Caillou Blue played better, but again, the competition for him against the Titans, especially when Calvin Ridley left the game, wasn't very high. So it was expected for him not to get beat. And he played a little bit better. I also think it was encouraging to see them go away from just this cover 3 shell and being very vanilla on defense. They were playing a lot more cover 2, doing a lot more disguising. They said they were trying to confuse Cam Ward, and that's the approach they should take. They can't just stay in one coverage and expect to win that way because they don't have that much talent. And frankly, not a lot of teams have the talent to be able to stay in cover 3 and just expect to win unless you have the Legion of Boom.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just generally, cover 3 has become a little bit more outdated unless you just got stud corners that you can put on man islands often. And in case you got a box safety who's versatile enough to drop in and defend the run and also back out when safeties are rotating and spinning and really cover a lot of ground. And so I applaud Patrick Graham for kind of switching things up. Obviously, he was trying to put a little bit more on the plate of a young quarterback, but it worked. I think it gave him different looks pre-snap and post-snap. It allowed the Raiders to kind of play a little bit further top down, that umbrella look where they can kind of go and rally, and it took away a lot of the deep threats early, and that made Cam Ward have to take things underneath. And then, as we alluded to last show, they had a tough time tackling, but the plays were there as far as the mechanism. It's like you make him dump it off, and then you hope that your guys will rally and tackle. And so that's almost like in baseball when you're forcing a hitter to hit ground balls. It's like, all right, you got to trust your defense at some point, but getting the balls on the ground, in this sense, underneath passes is what you prefer. Then you just got to close the deal on defense.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll mentioned that they do have to get better at tackling in open space. They missed too many tackles in open space against the Titans that allow them to extend drives, and you just can't do that against the Chiefs. So with that said, let's get into what we're looking for when the Raiders have the ball against the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo and that Chiefs defense.
Well, Spags likes to play a lot of cover 2, a little too high shell, but that could look like quarters where they match seam routes, they match deep routes, and then sometimes they'll mix in some cover 3, and he'll go even cover 0 and bring the house and make your receivers beat man, make the quarterback make an accurate throw in certain situations. They do like to play with Justin Reed, moving all over the field. He lines up at linebacker, he'll line up at slot, he'll line up at free. He's all over the place. For their defense, they aren't as prevalent in the league as far as their standings of showing what they're going to do pre-snap and staying in it. They usually do that more than others, but they will when they do rotate, they rotate hard and they try to disguise coverages, and so they're going to really test Geno. And I think ultimately there's going to be a lot of space underneath for Geno to work. Using all his weapons. Michael Mayer had a really good game. He's a big target. All the receivers in different combinations over the middle, and then Genty out of the backfield. Geno's got to spam it. He's got to just stay patient, and they're going to let you have that for the most part, and then they're going to try to light you up. And then I hope as well, the Raiders have a plan for the run game. I mean, the Chiefs on defense have, I think, 30 straight games, not allowed 100-yard rushers, so they are not prone to giving up a lot of chunk yardage on the run. But it's still something as with Genty and the Raiders, they have to stay efficient with. It can't be that just because they're good, you don't do it, and then you don't bang your head against the wall just for the sake of it. But you've got to keep them honest and have efficient rushing attempts. And then we talked about ways you can be efficient. You use motions. You use efficient runs that are like duo, inside zone. And then, you get the ball in Genty's hands in a lot of creative ways, but you've got to manufacture those elements to keep a balanced offense, especially when you don't have a lot of threats that are taking the top off of defense. This is going to be, I think, a game where the offense for the Raiders controls the clock, converts first downs, and gets the ball in their guys' hands underneath and lets them get yak, get up north and south, up the field, and sustain long drives, because the Chiefs are not just going to let you beat them over the top. And then on the other side on offense, they're hoping that you push the envelope past what you need to, because if they get up a score or two, then that's the game that they prefer to play.
Yeah. Early on in the season, they play in the first game. They played a lot of man coverage, 30% man coverage. I think they realize, they don't have the personnel that they used to have to be able to play that much man coverage. And then since then, they've played more zone, like you mentioned, more cover 2, and has helped them really put a lid on offenses and keep things in front of them, and it's helped them improve. So there will be some space for Gino to throw underneath. It's not a man-heavy off defense as we've seen from Steve Spagnuolo in the past. And defensively, they don't give up a lot of explosive runs. They're a very sound run defense. They play kind of a 2-gap technique. They're not going to gamble and get upfield. So you're not going to see TFLs or a lot of TFLs if you are correct with your assignments and things like that. They're 7th in yards before contact, 7th worst in yards before contact, which just means they're not rushing upfield and giving up their gaps. Chris Jones will take a chance on occasion, but these are guys that just want to keep things in front of them and not give you those explosive runs. And they're very good tacklers in open field too. So yeah, I think for Ashton Genty, like you have to be able to turn those 3-yard runs into 5-yard runs. And that's why they drafted you high, is to break those tackles and move the piles and just turn those efficient runs into successful runs with your power and with your ability to make guys miss.
Yeah, and I think I would like to see more 12 personnel. Obviously Brock Bowers is out, but using Ian Thomas a little more. His strong suit is not run blocking. That's not what we're asking to do, but his 2 bigger body presences on the field, I think, will allow for a more creative outlet for the run game and just more physicality. And then, if the rumors are true, you're trading Jakobi Meyers, I assume that means that there's one less weapon in the receiving room that you're relying on in the short term. And so, not that you're going to be in 12 all the time, but Michael Mayer, if he's in 11 all the time, he is not the same threat that Brock Bowers is. And so to me, getting in 12, using 11 sparingly, and again, controlling the clock, making really methodical long drives, taking what is given to you and not forcing the ball downfield, I think is the key to this game.
Yeah, and even though Spagnuolo does have a reputation for blitzing, he's more selective with his blitzing. So you want to really avoid 2nd and long and 3rd and long, because that's when he's going to bring some of those more creative pressures, and that's and we keep talking about it, but I mean that's going to be up to your run game to get you to avoid those long yardage situations when Spagnuolo is going to start sending those more creative pressures. And another thing is Gino has to be able to use his legs. When you're playing these teams that are going to play more match type of coverages, where those defenders are going to turn their back towards you, you have to be able to use your legs. Trevor Lawrence in the Jaguars win against the Chiefs on Monday night was really good with his legs. Obviously, Gino's not that kind of athlete, but he's still pretty spry, and he could create with his legs a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, and hopefully he has a better sliding attempt than he did last game, where he just awkwardly fell and limped off the field. Obviously, he's 35 plus. That is not his strength anymore. But yeah, I agree. When their backs are turned to you and it's effectively man coverage, and you've got a rush lane, they're going to move Leo Chenal and Chris Jones around between end and tackle. So even if your line gives up a little pressure, if there's a lane there's opportunities to take, especially if it's a chance to just convert and reset the chains. I think Geno has to have a quick trigger to do that, or in effect, dump it off to Jitty that serves as a similar purpose.
Yeah, and to me, I just think has to be like three plays where at least three plays where Geno is able to pick up the first down with his legs. I just think, with the limited weapons they have right now and the style that the Chiefs play, I think there will be opportunities to run. So that's something to watch out for. What are you watching for when the Chiefs have the ball?
Listen, this not that anyone's writing off the Chiefs, but the Raiders are getting them at what feels like just a momentum building, stride hitting time. Obviously, Rashee Rice coming back is a huge story. They might not use him fully. I mean, I remember it was earlier this season they came out, or was it? I might have been thinking of last season where they used him basically like Travis Kelce, where he was just a safety blanket. He would run 3-yard hooks, 5-yard hooks. He would sit down in the zone. Pat would find him quickly. He'd get north and south, and they were living in that. And so he has the ability to do that. He also has the ability to run these really speedy drags that really challenge their zones. And so his presence back, Xavier Worthy's presence over the top. Travis Kelce is still, he's slowing down, but he's still a big target. They just have a lot of space that they require you to cover. And I'm worried that this is just a tough matchup in timing for this Raiders defense that has put some good film out there. They got teams really tough, but after they kind of slow down the run, the back end has really let them down at times against the better passing attacks. And this is obviously one of them. Pat Mahomes, already over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2 picks, has continued to do his thing, even with his lack of weapons. Those weapons are now back. And so this is going to be a game that Max Crosby is going to have to find a way to create chaos at Pat Mahomes' feet. That big win when Antonio Pierce was head coach was a really physical matchup. They had multiple turnovers. They were really getting after the Chiefs. It felt like a whole new slate of energy for the Raiders. They've got to channel that, because that really is how you deal with this Chiefs offense, and just slow them down and hope your offense can capitalize and keep the score tight.
Yeah, unfortunately, those days where teams that were able to like the Chiefs were able to compete with really good teams, but they were also kind of playing to the level of bad teams in the last couple of years. But now they have their weapons, their offensive line's improved. It looks like this Chiefs offense is not going to be the type of offense that lets bad teams hang around. So, like you mentioned, it is unfortunate that the Raiders are playing them as they're kind of hitting their stride offensively. So it's a lot to worry about for the Raiders defense. Last week they went under center more than they have at any time this year. They had 17 snaps under center. Isaiah Pacheco is a different back when he's getting those under center runs rather than a shotgun. He's not a guy that you want to run side to side too much. When he's getting carries under center, he averages 5.2 yards per carry. Shotgun is 3.6. There's other underlying metrics that show that he's a much better back. So it looks like they're leaning into that. And then you have to worry about the play action game from when they go under center. And Rashee Rice, man, I was watching some tape of him today. He's like Deebo Samuel, except for he's able to run downfield routes a little bit better than Deebo, because he's so good on those bubble screens. He's the slant guy when they run their RPOs. He could run crossers across the field. But his specialty is yak. I mean, he is dangerous when he has the ball in his hands. He's not your typical number one receiver, but he's just with what they have, speed on the outside. Like, he's just exactly what they need in this offense. And he's probably not going to get the full gamut of snaps that you would expect from him when he's playing at his best, because he's just coming back. And, part of getting suspended is you're not with the team at all. So he's been doing work on his own, and this is the first week where he's really back with the team. So you're probably not going to see like 60 snaps from him or whatever. But the snaps that he's going to be on the field, he's going to be a hard guy to tackle.
Yeah, definitely. And there's going to be, a game where you don't see a lot of Landon Roberts. Devin White's going to really have to Devin White and Jamal Adams are really going to be challenged in space against these over the middle receivers, which include the size of Travis Kelce, but then the speed of the smaller guys and the savvy of a guy like Rashee Rice. So they're really going to be stressed. And this is not a day to not have your tackling gloves on. So I agree. He takes their offense to another level. And Chip Kelly, take notes. Under center runs, get Genty's back to his old stance, however much you think that affects things. And then what that does is directly correlates to the play action game. It makes things look a little similar for the defense. So, yeah, the Chiefs have figured that out. I hope other teams are paying attention. That the teams that are trending in that direction on offense have had so much success so far this season. Under center snaps, under center runs, under center play action.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Kelce is still a dangerous threat. He's not the big play threat that we're used to seeing, but he's still a hard matchup for linebackers and safeties. And then he's going to find those space underneath in those. He's going to find the holes in the zones for Patrick Mahomes and for Mahomes. I don't know if he's still leading the Chiefs in rushing yards, but he's scrambling a lot this year. He might not have to when the offense is at full strength anymore. But he does look pretty quick. I don't know if he's quicker than he has been in the past. But he looks good as a scrambler, and that's always something you have to watch out for.
Well, I made this comment. I think their first game, he looks so quick, but we have become accustomed to him eventually rolling an ankle, fallen into, and having a spat for half the season. So we're used to his little Pat Mahomes waddle on a sprained ankle. But when he's full go, he is quick. I think he probably has gained a little quickness, but generally he's just healthy right now. And so you see what kind of threat he is when he wants to use his legs to be creative and extend plays, because he's obviously looking always to push the ball downfield when he's scrambling, but he absolutely will run on the edge and then do that cheeky thing where he baits late penalties on the sideline, or he runs a guy over, which I just hate.
I was going to ask you what you thought about
listen,
that.
I trained with his trainer, Bobby Stroop. I think he's a good dude. He has, they do a lot of good things, but that in particular on the sideline is bad faith football. And, be the first to throw your hands up when Pat gets lit up, but then also bait guys and then run them over when they're obviously like, hey, go out of bounds. Like, you're the quarterback. And so you can't have it both ways. And so that frustrates me a lot. And, especially when it's in critical moments and the refs, whether you think it's something conspiratorial or whatever, they're going to protect the quarterbacks, and he knows that. And it's just, it puts the defenders in just an awful, awful place, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like, Kenny Pickett had a huge run in college. I don't know if you remember it, where he faked sliding and then ran for a touchdown or a bigger run or whatever it is. And that's just like taking advantage of the rules because, defenders have to pull up as soon as you start sliding.
Yeah.
And it's bad faith, like you mentioned. Like, defenders, it's bad sportsmanship, really, because it's like, defenders have to slow down to protect you, and then you take advantage of it and you keep going. So that's just something that you have to deal with when you play the Chiefs. So you have to be smart with that. Devin White, I think, is actually one of the better quarterback spies in the league. So I would expect to see him be a spy a lot. Patrick Graham has typically come up with pretty good plans against Mahomes. He even going back to the Giants, he's had pretty good plans and ability to kind of contain Mahomes. So we'll see what he does. One strategy he does use is called odd mirror, where they have a 3-man rush and a really aggressive spy, where they'll flush Mahomes to a certain direction, and that as soon as he goes, Devin White or whoever's playing that spy will start rushing him. So I expect to see some of that. But yeah, what matchup are you looking for specifically in this game?
If we get no Josh Simmons and we get Jalen Moore at left tackle, that'll be a huge one against whether Max Crosby flip sides or Malcolm Kuntz and Tyree. That'll be a big matchup. And then I think ultimately this Raiders offensive line front, it feels like just because I was a lineman, I focus on that, but they really just, if they can have a solid game, they give the offense such a chance to have success. And against a really stout defensive front that you said is going to really try to gap control, which means that you can get movement on them. It allows you, since they're not trying to penetrate as much, it allows you movement against Omenihu and Chris Jones, who are all good defensive linemen, but you give Genty a chance because once he gets to the line of scrimmage, he is a special back. And so I'm really looking across the board at these matchups, especially with Stone Forsythe. I think there was people arguing maybe Charles Grant gets some play. I listen, I can't really defend or I can't really argue against that if they want to make that choice. I haven't watched enough film on Grant, but he's got to step up. They're going to find a way to Chip Kelly, protect him in pass pro, but in the run game, just have solid double teams and move them off their spots. Easier said than done, but give Genty a chance to get to the second level, and that really changes the outlook of your offense.
No, that's a good one. And like they have to be able to, like you mentioned, have that chemistry with their combos. And as long as they don't allow negative plays and mess up some of their assignments, I feel like Genty has a chance to be efficient and get to the second level. Maybe they don't get that 60-yard run like against Chicago, but if you get those 7-yard runs, that's going to be huge for this offense. My matchup is going to be Max Crosby against Jawan Taylor. If there is a weakness in this lineup, it's Jawan Taylor. I mean, I think he's cut down on the penalties a little bit, but I think that's a mismatch. Max Crosby against Taylor, and Max Crosby has to dominate this game for the Raiders defense to have a chance against Patrick Mahomes. So I think this is the game where you want to see Crosby just take over, and if he's able to, then they'll have a shot. All right, X Factor. Who is your X Factor in this game?
Whoever replaces the reps for what we assume is going to be a traded Jakobi Meyers against this Kansas City defensive backfield. Will they have the wherewithal to kind of understand what they're playing against, read the coverage off the line of scrimmage and sit down in these zones, or beat man if it's cover zero? This Spags defense can really be tricky pre-snap to post-snap. So whether that's an increased role for Dante Thornton now or Jack Besh or a different change of position for Tucker, that to me is going to be the X factor.
Yeah, no, definitely. Whoever fills that role has to be productive. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 100-yard game, but if they get 30, 40 yards and some of those plays come on critical downs, then that's going to matter. My X factor is Michael Mayer, because like we mentioned, they're going to play a lot of zone. I thought Michael Mayer did a good job of just finding space against the Tennessee Titans, and for them to keep this offense efficient and stay away from second and third and long, Mayer's going to have to find those holes and create yards after the catch. I think he could do it against this Chiefs defense. So I want to see Michael Mayer have a decent game in this one. All right, let's get into predictions. What is your prediction for this game?
Well, I don't always look at all the Vegas stuff. I'm not a gambler, but I do see that the over-under is at like 45.5. This feels like an under kind of game just because if the Raiders play how I think they should play, especially away, it's going to restrict the points scored. Kansas City, again, is hitting a stride. They're just, to me, they were so underrated while they were struggling to find their way with health. And so my final score is going to be 27-16 Kansas City. The Raiders, have coming off a win. That was a big win, but it was a very poorly coached, judging by the firing team in the Titans. And I just don't think they have enough in this moment, short of just a miraculous game a la the game we referenced earlier. They've got to do just a lot of Herculean efforts, and against a team that it feels like the light bulbs come on for the Chiefs. I just don't know if this going to happen this week. So again, 27-16 Chiefs over Raiders.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Chiefs are nearly at full strength. They are missing Simmons, like we mentioned, but they're one of the healthiest teams in the league. The Raiders are, still missing Colton Miller, still missing Brock Bowers, presumably, might be missing Jakobi Meyers. So I just don't see them winning on the road at this point in time. So I think it's going to be 31-14. I think the Raiders find a way to score a couple touchdowns, but I just think the Chiefs offense is rolling right now, and it's too big of a task in Kansas City. I hope I'm wrong, but the Chiefs are rolling right now, man.
Yeah, and Raiders' the last two away losses have just been really not close games, and so we hope that they learn their lesson about how they're going to attack on offense and how they're going to, play to the team they have right now. But ultimately, I think the Chiefs are the better team right now.
Yeah, I just think you don't want to see what happened in Indianapolis happen with the Chiefs, and you don't want to see so many self-inflicted mistakes kill you. Like if they beat you, let them, make them win, without you hurting yourself. I think that's the hope for the Raiders going into the game. If they even want to have a chance, they have to be able to capitalize in the red zone and hope that some turnover luck moves their way and they're able to get some takeaways. All right, that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you, Marshall, for joining. And we will talk to you guys live after the game on Sunday, where hopefully there's an upset.
Let's hope. Yeah, man. Keep the faith, Raiders.
All right, talk to you guys later.